Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're like most of us, you have a pretty clear idea of how people react to um, extreme stress.
Right. Fear, panic, maybe freezing on the spot.
Exactly, the fight or flight stuff. But today, we're going to unpack one of the most, well, unsettling and counterintuitive reactions the human brain can have.
Laughter.
Laughter in the face of absolute horror.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? And we're not talking about, nervous giggles in an awkward meeting.
No.
We're talking about that deep, almost hysterical laughter you sometimes hear about when someone witnesses something truly shocking.
Like a major accident
Yeah.
or a violent threat,
Yeah.
even seeing someone die.
Yes. And your first thought, your gut reaction is always the same.
What is wrong with that person?
Yeah.
You immediately wonder if they're detached or, if they've had some kind of psychological break. It just feels wrong.
It violates every social script we have. But that's our starting point for this deep dive. The sources we looked at, a lot of psychological studies, field observations, they're all very clear on one thing.
What's that?
This isn't a sign of instability. It's not madness. It's actually an innate, automatic, and incredibly sophisticated psychological defense mechanism.
The defense mechanism.
The system is literally fighting for its own survival.
So the brain is actively short-circuiting what we'd expect.
Yeah.
The terror, the shock,
Yeah.
to prevent a complete system collapse.
That's it, exactly.
And that's our mission today. To really unpack why the brain chooses something like laughter when it's facing imminent shock, and how this seemingly bizarre response is actually a critical survival tool.
Let's get into it. The first thing to understand is the threshold. This mechanism, it doesn't just kick in for everyday stress.
Right. This isn't for a bad day at work.
Not at all. The sources describe it as an intervention, something that's deployed only when the brain senses the person is right on the edge of a psychological shock.
So the internal alarm bells are ringing louder than ever before.
They're screaming. The brain does this kind of instant calculation and determines that the emotional trauma coming in is it's too big to process. The system can't handle it.
So it's like the mind is pulling an emergency lever.
A big red lever, yeah. It knows that if things keep going on this track, the result is going to be a total collapse, catatonic freezing, a permanent psychological scar, something terrible.
And it says, nope, I have to protect this person, and I'll do it by any means necessary.
However strange it looks from the outside.
And that strange result, that's what the research calls panic laughter, right?
Exactly. It's a triggered, reflexive response. And the word panic is key here. This has nothing to do with comedy or humor. It's a physical symptom of extreme distress.
That's such a critical distinction. So if it isn't about finding something funny, what is the protective function? I mean, how does laughing act as a shield?
The main job is separation. The sources describe it almost like installing a cognitive circuit breaker.
A circuit breaker. I like that. To stop the overload.
That's the perfect analogy. The act of laughing works by actively decoupling the individual's raw, overwhelming emotions from the terrifying reality they're looking at.
It creates a buffer.
A mandatory psychological buffer created by a sudden burst of intense physical activity.
That just seems like a monumental task. How could a physical action like laughing actually achieve that kind of emotional separation?
Well, it's a brilliant physiological hack when you think about it.
Right.
Think about what happens when you laugh. It's physically demanding, right? Your muscles contract, your breathing goes wild, and you get a rush of neurochemicals.
Endorphins.
Endorphins, exactly.
Right.
The body's natural pain relievers. It also messes with your stress hormones. So the brain is essentially flooding the system with chemicals designed to fight back against the cortisol and adrenaline that are pouring in from the terror response.
So it's using the body to change the mind's chemistry.
It's a chemical counterattack. It's forcing a change because the normal cognitive tools have already failed. The brain has calculated, I can't process this pain, so I have to dilute it fast.
That's like psychic triage.
The highest level. And what's really interesting is that observers in these studies have noted that right after a burst of this panic laughter, the person, they're still obviously distressed, but they seem slightly less overwhelmed.
It's paralyzed.
Yes, less paralyzed than someone who just took the full, unfiltered hit of the shock. That defensive laugh bought them a split second of clarity, or at least some chemical relief, to regain a tiny bit of function.
Let's make this more concrete.
Yeah.
Say someone witnesses one of those chaotic, awful traffic accidents right in front of them. The expected response is a scream or just freezing in horror.
Right.
Where does panic laughter fit in? What's the sequence?
The typical observation is There's a moment of just wide-eyed stillness. The brain is taking in all this impossible data, and then it's followed by this sudden jarring sound. It's laughter, but it's completely empty of joy.
Manic.
Manic is a good word. Sometimes it's short, like a bark. One source, we looked at detailed trauma in military personnel, and they described soldiers who laughed hysterically right after an IED blast, only to just collapse in tears a few minutes later once that initial chemical surge wore off. The laughter was the system's first crude attempt to absorb the impact of the blast.
That really drives home the difference between a deliberate emotional reaction and this involuntary chemical one.
It does.
Okay, so let's shift to a related concept the sources bring up a lot, which is humor under threat. It seems similar, but different.
It's a really important distinction. Panic laughter is usually a reaction to a sudden, surprising shock. The brain is caught off guard. Humor under threat happens when a person is facing imminent death, and they know it. They are fully aware of their own mortality.
So this is classic gallows humor. The person knows they're about to die in the next few seconds, and yet a joke or a laugh just comes out.
Exactly, and often it's completely unintentional. The scientific view here is that this laughter is a mechanism of, well, profound psychological acceptance and defiance. Yes, since fear and panic can't change the outcome anymore, the brain just deploys a totally different emotional response. It's a way of asserting some kind of agency, some humanity, in a moment where you have zero control. It's like a neurological declaration that says, you can take my life, but you can't take my ability to react on my own terms.
And just so we're absolutely clear for everyone listening, this has nothing to do with happiness.
Nothing.
Zero. We are only talking about what the sources call a survival laugh. It's a tool used by the system to maintain psychological integrity right up to the end, or to lessen the trauma for someone who might actually survive.
That's right. If you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, the brain is always running these threat calculations. What happens when the calculation comes back? Threat level. Maximum. Probability of survival. 0.
Fight or flight doesn't work anymore.
It becomes useless, right? You can't win from a falling building or fight an explosion, so the adaptive mind switches to the next best thing, a mechanism to reduce the internal cost of that imminent doom.
The adaptive ability there is it's incredible. To completely switch the body's expected emotional path from pure terror to this manic humor, just to protect itself.
It really is. It shows you the absolute depth of our built-in drive for self-preservation. And the research suggests this defensive switch is almost instantaneous. We're talking about the body overriding its own primary fear system, the amygdala, by firing up parts of the brain linked to motor control and vocalization. It's high-speed psychological deflection.
But that brings up a tricky question. How did the sources draw the line between this biological defense and someone who, might actually be dissociating or has an underlying pathology where they find tragedy funny?
That's a crucial point, and the sources are careful about it. The key difference is that panic laughter is almost always involuntary, and it happens without social context.
What do you mean?
The person is profoundly distressed right before or right after the laughter. They often describe it as something alien, something that just escaped them against their will.
I see.
Whereas a genuine pathological detachment is usually more sustained. It's a long-term lack of appropriate emotional response, not a brief, explosive, and confusing event.
That helps. So it's the body fighting to save the mind, and the tool it grabs is laughter.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's broaden this out a little. The sources say this extreme reaction isn't only laughter. What other strange defenses pop up under this kind of duress?
Yeah, when you look at the whole spectrum of acute trauma responses, the variety is huge. As we said, some people laugh uncontrollably,
Right.
but others, facing the exact same event, might go into nonstop hysterical weeping, just sobbing without end. And then there's the classic freeze response, which is more than just standing still.
It's a kind of dissociation?
A profound mental dissociation. They basically check out of reality for a little while because it's just too much to bear.
So if you see someone reacting to a horrible event with this manic energy, whether it's wild laughter or uncontrollable crying, it's all coming from the same place.
It's all part of the same defensive umbrella. It's the psyche desperately trying to manage an unbearable situation by converting that internal overload into a physically exhausting external display.
It's a release valve.
Exactly. The output is personalized. Every brain has its own unique automatic way of flipping that circuit breaker. But the core message from the research is consistent. Don't mistake the protective reaction for the instability itself. the bizarre behavior you're seeing. That's the defense, not the illness.
And this is really the aha moment for anyone listening. The next time you see or hear about someone laughing in the face of terror, you now have this context.
You can stop yourself from making that snap judgment.
You realize you're not looking at a monster or someone who's breaking.
Yeah.
You're looking at someone who is actively, desperately fighting to survive the psychological impact of what's happening.
It's a sign of an intense inner conflict and a powerful, innate drive to just persist. It's not a lack of empathy, it's an excess of trauma. And understanding that, it just immediately shifts your perspective from judgment to, well, to empathy.
It really does.
Yeah.
It gives us a framework to synthesize all this. We have this idea of innate psychological defense. We have the specific mechanism of panic laughter, and then the broader category of humor under threat.
And that knowledge lets you look past our social expectations of how someone should grieve or react, and instead you see the raw mechanics of survival in action.
And that feels so important because we judge reactions based on social norms, don't we?
All the time.
Yeah.
But the trauma response system does not care about social norms.
Yeah.
It cares about one thing: maintaining basic psychological integrity. Understanding this stops us from mislabeling a crucial adaptive survival tool as some kind of weakness or character flaw.
It's incredible testament to the resilience that's just programmed into our neurochemistry. The brain's ability to deploy something as physically demanding and, frankly, as emotionally inappropriate as laughter to save itself from collapse, it's just staggering.
And that reflection brings us to the final thought we want to leave you with, which comes right out of the material we reviewed. If the brain can trigger such a powerful physical reaction, uncontrollable laughter, or weeping to handle acute psychological pain, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
What other common, seemingly irrational human behaviors that we see every single day might actually be more subtle, innate defensive maneuvers, things designed to protect us from deeper, unseen traumas?
So you're saying, think about how often we see behaviors that we just dismiss as, I don't know, a personal quirk or a bad habit.
Exactly. When maybe what we're actually seeing is a system working in overdrive just to maintain its balance. A defense mechanism so deeply embedded that we've confused it with someone's personality.
That's a powerful idea.
It just encourages us to look at the world and at how other people react to all the stress that life throws at us with a bit more intellectual curiosity.
And a lot more empathy.
And a lot more empathy.
Absolutely. Thank you for engaging in this deep dive with us into the strange and unexpected logic of the human defense system. We'll catch you next time.